If it's in the game, it's in the game. And if it's a great game, then it's in this episode of Convince Me. Welcome in, everybody. It is episode number 63 of Convince Me. I am Andy Rutherford, joined by my co-hosts, Mr. Rut and Bennett, Mr. Casey Elrod. Gentlemen, how's it going?
It's going good. Maybe this won't be your last show like it was the last edition for NCAA football back in 2014. Maybe we'll have continued episodes after that.
Possibly.
Right. I don't know about you, but when I was coming up with my research for this show, had a whole bunch of nostalgia come back to me. I thought about all the hours that I'd put in, all the accomplishments that I'd made, all the Mountain Dew that I drank, and ultimately all the controllers that I threw.
You and me both, my friend. You and me both, especially on that last point. I was never much of a Mountain Dew guy, though. But, the rest of it rings pretty true. We're summing up probably a literal year or two of my life in this show today. But before we get too deep into that, very briefly, got to do our weekly shield. Make sure you're following us on all of our socials, facebook.com/convincemeshow, Twitter, we are at Convince Me Show, Instagram, Convince Me Show over there as well. You can find us on YouTube, tinyurl.com/Convince Me Show. And of course, we are a podcast. So make sure you're catching us every week, wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. If we're not where you listen to your favorite podcasts, let us know. We'll do what we can to get there. I think I just set the record for the quickest shield in the history of the show.
You did.
And I don't know why, because that would seem to indicate I'm ready to get into the show. If you didn't pick up on the context clues, for those that don't know, it's a pretty big week this week. It's a yearly event. It's Madden week. The new installment of Madden has come out. The official release date is Friday. But, I am living proof that being an adult doesn't mean you stop playing video games. It means you can afford to buy the deluxe edition and play it 3 days early. So I'm taking time out of my Madden time to record this show for our listeners today. But it's a big week, and this week we're going to look at sports video games. Myself and Mr. Bennett will each be drafting a lineup of those, and Mr. Elrod will judge our lineup. And I got to say, when we picked this topic, I was very excited. I was looking forward to doing this. And then when it came time to prepare for this topic, I hated it, and I don't want to do this show. I was telling these guys before we started recording, I initially had 15 games on my list. Trimming that down to 10 was terrible. And then putting those 10 in some sort of draft order was even more excruciating. And I have a feeling with pretty much every pick Bennett makes tonight, I'm going to be pissed off. So, Bennett, what are your sentiments as far as your preparation this week?
Well, my preparation was pretty much just right off the top of the head. The only thing I had to do was go back and get little minor details. I was kind of like you. I got quite a few knocked out pretty quick and decided to stop after like 9 or 10. A little bit intimidated though going into this. This is going up against Rut and video games and then sports video games on top of that. This is kind of like a David versus Goliath scenario here.
Or
but
me going up against you versus Marvel versus DC. That's pretty daunting.
Except you probably had a pre-show advantage that you just completely threw away. Elrod, what are your thoughts on moderating this fine, excruciating event we've got coming up?
Here's how I'm judging tonight. I have come up with 6 video games. And these do not come off of Ranker, okay? So if you think I'm just going to go on Ranker and pick the top 10 and whoever gets the top 5 wins, you lose. Because if any of these video games winds up in either of your draft boards tonight, you will get Elrod points. And whoever has the most Elrod points wins. That's how we're going to do it tonight.
Yeah, but
go ahead, babe.
My problem is all the video games that I played before you were like born.
So you're going to be at a
I'm
disadvantage,
already at a
probably.
disadvantage. Yeah.
Sure. All right. Well, Elrod's in charge. This game is in big head mode. So, big head, how are we determining draft order here?
Well, I kind of alluded to this game earlier. NCAA Football 14, the last college football game that we've had the ability to play that was on the market. This question is for Bennett. Bennett is going to give me a number, and Rut is going to tell me whether Bennett's number is higher or lower than the actual number. On the game, each team was rated overall 1 through 99. Alabama had the best rating in that particular edition at 99. The worst one was Georgia State, who was in their first year as a program when the video game came out. I want to know, what was the overall rating for Georgia State on the NCAA Football 14? 1 through 99.
58.
58. Right? Is the actual rating for Georgia State higher or lower than 58?
My initial thought was low 60s, so I'm going to say higher.
The actual rating for Georgia State in 14th edition of NCAA football is 60. So Bennett almost had it, but Rut gets it with the over.
It was really 58, and they rounded up.
That's what it is. That's what it is. I think Idaho was at 61. I think they were UMass. UMass was in their first year, and they were 61, and then 62 was Idaho.
Where'd they have Willie Taggart's Florida State at?
I don't think they were very high either.
UT San Antonio was the worst team in that game. I don't remember, though. Maybe it was Georgia State.
I went through it, and 60 was the lowest one. So, Rod, would you like to, in your snake draft tonight, would you like to go first, or would you like second and third picks?
It's tough.
I'm going to.
This may be the toughest show Rut's ever done.
Yeah. I'm going to get my pissed off on early, and I don't want the very last pick of the draft. So because of that, I'm going to give Bennett the first pick.
Oh, so Bennett gets the first pick tonight. So Bennett, who we taking number one overall?
Well, number one was actually, I had to think way, 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 way back to when I was probably 5 or 6 years old. If that, it may be something like that. It's the very first sports game that I remember playing, and it was on the original Nintendo Entertainment System, and that's Tecmo Super Bowl. Came out in 1991. This is a huge one because this was actually the first football game to use real teams and real player names and their likeness all in one game. You may have had one or the other before, but never both. This was actually licensed by the NFL and the NFL Players Association. This game was huge success. It has a cult following even today. Some of the really cool things that it got right that kind of laid down a template was, it incorporated the full-length seasons. You had like a playoff format. You had the Super Bowl. You could even play in the Pro Bowl, which is pretty cool. You had your very first souped-up human cheat code with Bo Jackson. I saw a thing where somebody on YouTube ran the first play, and they ran around the entire first quarter with nobody tackling him. And then as time ticked to 0 in the first quarter, they went across the end zone. He was that souped up. You couldn't beat him. Even this game today, it's one of the most modified games of all time. People update the rosters every year. It's really cool. They have online leagues. They have national tournaments. Nintendo Life ranked at number 6 NES game of all time. That's not just sports game that's any NES game all time. And it was right behind Contra, Legend of Zelda, and Mario Brothers. So definitely high rankings for Tecmo Super Bowl. So that'll be my number 1 pick.
That's a strong first pick. That's a heavy hitter coming off the board. Right? Does that disappoint you? Who we going with at second? Second and third picks.
Something told me Bennett wouldn't take my number 1, and he didn't, but he did take my number 2. But you want to talk about heavy hitter. My first pick is a heavy hitter, and my first 2 picks are going to be another 2 of those, like Bennett said with Tecmo Bowl, cult classics that people are still playing today. And my first pick is going to be Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. Again, we're going back to the original NES. This game paved the way in the sports video game world and was a must-own if you had an NES. Really, this kind of, at the time, Mike Tyson was in the middle of his reign of terror, and this game really increased his cultural influence and gave fans a new outlook on boxing. This video game along with Mike Tyson's reign of terror, upped the interest in boxing quite a bit. And it was the first instance of a video game making somebody a pop cultural icon, long before it happened for John Madden. This game was an NES game that sold over 2 million copies. And much like Tecmo Bowl, with Bennett said, there's still tournaments going on today of people playing Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. And it's one of those games that there's not a lot of people that beat it. Because beating Mike Tyson as the big boss, so to speak, was dang near impossible to do. Bleacher Report rated this as the second best sports video game of all time. Ranker, which I wasn't overly happy with Ranker's list for the most part, but they did have it at number 3. So my first pick is going to be Mike Tyson's Punch-Out.
Good pick.
Does that hurt your feelings, Bennett, him picking Mike Tyson there?
A little bit. It was my second, third, and fourth pick. So
we going to a break, or you want to?
Yeah, we'll take a quick break, and then I'll give my next pick when we get back right after this. All right, guys, welcome back. All right, where do we go from here?
Well, Bennett took Tecno Super Bowl number 1, and you just took Mike Tyson, and now you own the 3rd overall pick. Who we going with at 3?
For the 3rd overall pick, for my second pick, again, much like these first 2, cult classic. It's an older game that people are still playing today. And it's one that on the face, you wouldn't have thought when the game came out that anybody would even care about it. Yet here we are 25 plus years later, and there's tournaments going on. People still play this game. People still love this game. I'm going with NHL 94. This not only introduced what a hockey video game should be with the gameplay, but it was the first hockey game to feature one-timers, and it was just so much fun to play. Even people like myself in 1994 that was not a big hockey fan. There are a lot of people that could care less about hockey that absolutely love this game. This is one of those games you get together with your college buddies and still play today. It was top 20 on Bleacher Report's top video games of all time. It was top 5 on Ranker. So the people love it, the critics love it, and people are still playing it today. So I'm going NHL 94 here.
I like that pick. So going with Mike Tyson, then NHL 94. Bennett, we're circling back with you now. You took Tecmo Super Bowl number 1. Who are we going with the 4th overall pick?
4th overall is a game that came out in 1993, and I could still hear the announcer say, "Midway presents NBA Jam." This came out in the arcades. It was on the Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis. Man, what a fun game. This this is a huge game. It was very influential. This really opened the doors for your other games like your NFL Blitz, your NBA Streets, your MLB Slugfest, all that. This was the ultimate 2-on-2 arcade showdown, if you will. Had all of the stars back in the early 90s, except for MJ. He didn't want to be on it. He's too cool. That's okay, though. What I liked about it was very theatrical and very over the top. You know, you had people that were dunking from the 3-point line. You could have Sean Kemp dunk from a 3. You could have David Robinson do a 20-foot high windmill dunk, or you could get Reggie Miller and pretty much shoot like a full court 3-pointer, and he pretty much hit it every time. When you think of like best of video games, NBA Jam's always firmly planted there towards the top. And some of the greatest lines that we got that stick with you came from NBA Jam that kind of became like, I don't know, kind of catchy in the 90s. Like people would say, he's on fire, or boom shakalaka, stuff like that. So just an awesome, awesome game. And a lot of people still play this even today. There's been like remakes of it, stuff like that. I still play NBA Jam. It's that good. So I'll take NBA Jam with my second pick.
I love that pick. That was one of the earliest games I can remember playing on any platform, NBA Jam, even though, like you said, MJ was not on the game. So who are you taking with the 5th overall pick, Bennett?
I want to shift gears a little bit and kind of come a little bit more present day. I'm going to go with Wii Sports. Came out from Nintendo Wii. This was very unique, and I think it deserves to be on this list because this game came out to showcase, you know, the Nintendo Wii's very futuristic motion sensor technology that it had. If you bought a Nintendo Wii, which a lot of people bought Nintendo Wiis, you couldn't find those things about the first year and a half that they came out. If you bought the game or bought the console, you got this game. It was a collection of 5 different sports. You had tennis, you had bowling, you had golf, boxing, and my personal favorite was the baseball. Of course, everybody knows you use the little remote to mimic all the movements and the motions. So it kind of puts you like right into the action, which is a really neat concept. It was well received by critics with generally good reviews. GamePro gave it a 4.2 out of 5. Get this all right. It's the best-selling single-platform game of all time with over 82 million copies sold. That's pretty crazy. And it's the best-selling Nintendo game of all time. Of all the Nintendo games, Wii Sports is the best-selling. So I think to include this on my list it's crucial to my list just for the technology and what it brought to kind of get you away from the joystick and the handheld controller to get you kind of more involved in the action. So I definitely think it deserves to be on this list.
And you left out the most important thing, Bennett.
Well, you make your own character.
It's number 1 on Ranker. Number 1 on Ranker.
I didn't even know that. There we go.
Right.
Number 1 on Ranker. Number 3 in my list.
That's right. Well, he stole your thunder picking Ranker's number 1 pick, right? So I'm sorry about that. You take it.
I'll go ahead and shock you. Ranker's number 1 pick is not on my draft board.
Wow.
It was in
First
my
time ever, ladies and gentlemen.
It was in my original 15. But I will say the next on my draft board was NBA Jam, so I'm a little pissed off. And I feel like I'm back in that old video game mode because I'm throwing pins now as opposed to controllers, which are a lot cheaper to replace.
Just to refresh the audience, you took Mike Tyson punch out with the 2nd pick, and then you took NHL 94. Who would be the 6th overall pick tonight?
The 6th overall pick, some have gone so far as to call it the best sports game of all time. I don't know that I would necessarily say it's the best. For the sake of my argument tonight, I'll say it's 3rd best. But it's going to be MVP Baseball 2005. Today, the show, those guys at San Diego studio, make a fantastic baseball game. And as great as those are, they have not come to what EA Sports did with MVP Baseball in 2005. There has arguably never been a game that was more in depth when it comes to their owner mode. You were given control of a franchise, and you could control everything from the color of your stadium walls all the way down to your single A starting rotation. Even the show today, with everything it offers, doesn't offer you that kind of control. The gameplay for the time was untouched. I logged hours upon hours of this game. And this is another game that features one of the most dominant players in a video game of all time, the great John Dowd. And for those that don't remember who John Dowd was, he played outfield for the San Francisco Giants. And noticeably missing from that game was a gentleman by the name of Barry Bonds. But this fake guy, John Dowd, seemed to be, like Bennett called Bo Jackson, a human cheat code. One of the best, probably the best player ever in a baseball video game. This game sold over 1 million copies. It ranks in the top 10 on CBS Sports. It ranks in the top 10 on Ranker. It ranks in the top 10 on Bleacher Report's list of best sports video games of all time. MVP Baseball 05 right here in the third round.
I love that pick. I played that many times myself too back in the day. Bennett, we are back to you. Oh no, we're not back to you. We're still here with Rut.
Easy kill.
Still here with Rut.
Only if he doesn't steal my pick.
You got it, number 7.
Number 7 overall. And apparently I miscalculated something because I am going to end up with the last pick in the draft, but that's okay. At 7 overall in the 4th round, I'm going to go with a game that we have already discussed on this show. It is the most recent game I have on my list, and that is Ncaa Football 2014. The Ncaa Football franchise put out a lot of great games, and it seems like they improved every single year, especially when it came to aspects like recruiting and those sort of things. And of course, the gameplay you would expect to get better every year. This game, of course, as Elrod mentioned to start the show, was the last of that franchise, at least for the last 7 years. Hopefully we've got another one coming in a year or two. But it has become such a cult classic in such a short amount of time. Since it's been going away, it'll actually cost you more money to buy this game today than it would if you'd bought it back then. And with sports video games, that's almost unheard of. When there's a new one that comes out every year, those lose value every single year. And once a game's 2 or 3 years old, you might be able to sell it for about $10, maybe. GameStop will give you like $2.17 for it. But even as recently as yesterday, this game is going for like $75-$80 on eBay. A year or so ago, it was going for in the hundreds of dollars on eBay. It ranks in CBS Sports top 10 video games of all time. Probably the newest cult classic on the list. It's the newest game I have on my list, but I'm going Ncaa 2014.
And if you want to buy a brand new copy of that video game on Amazon, you can purchase it for $352.99, just slightly over the original MSRP.
Go to eBay.
I think finally we're back to you to recap our audience. You went number 1 overall with Tecmo Super Bowl. You went with NBA Jam, and then you went with Wii Sports. With the 8th overall pick, who are we going with?
There's a big name that's not been thrown out there yet. So it's crazy to get him with my 4th pick. Wouldn't really have a best sports video game show without talking about the Madden franchise. So I'm going to go with Madden 2004. All right. Yeah. EA Sports came out for the Xbox, PS2, and the short-lived GameCube. You know, arguably Madden '04 is probably the best installment of the franchise. It had some really cool features to it. You know, you could, like in the owner mode that was brand new, you could control everything. You could control how much a hot dog was at your concessions. It was really cool. You could relocate teams. That's really cool. And it had like a new like training camp mode. They really put a lot of new features into it. It wasn't just an updated roster and let's get this out the door and make our profit. You know, probably the biggest thing about it too is, you know, I talked about Bo Jackson being kind of overpowered. What about Michael Vick being another overpowered guy? He had like a 95 speed rating, and he was just like virtually unstoppable in this game. It was another cheat code, really, just like Bo was. You know, and another thing too, it got a lot of really good reviews. Game Informer gave it a 8.75 out of 10. IGN gave it a 9.4 out of 10. And Nintendo Power gave it a 4.6 out of 5. You don't really get those high numbers as much now with Madden as you did back in the day. It sold over 3.5 million copies and earned over $170 million just in the U.S. alone. And it was named Game of the Year at the 2003 Spot TV Video Game Awards. And another important thing, too, with the Madden, you know, they always have who's going to be on the cover of Madden every year. It's a big deal. Me and Rut talk about it all the time, or at least we used to. You know, you think back to other years, you know, who was on the cover of Madden '02? Do you know, Elrod?
'02? Ray Lewis, I think.
Dante Culpepper.
Okay.
Madden '03. Do you know who was on Madden '03?
Was it Ray Lewis?
It does. It was Marshall Faulk.
Oh.
But when I say Madden '04, you have that iconic image of Michael Vick running with, you know, that's just, you know, it speaks to the volume of how iconic this Madden was. You instantly recognize the cover of it and the game. So got to go with Madden '04.
Let's be honest. Hold on, before you go to your next pick, let's be honest. Did you jack up your hot dog prices to $15 on that game?
No.
I did.
I'm an honest man. Ray Lewis was on the 2005.
Oh, okay. I was going to be right eventually.
Yeah, eventually.
So who are we rounding out your list tonight with, Ben?
Oh man, I've pretty much got a three-way tie for my last pick, and all three of them deserve to be on there. Before I get to them,
I wonder if your three are the last three that are on my list.
You know, that's a good point. So I'm not even going to name the other two just in case you take them.
No.
Maybe once we round out, I might give my honorable mentions. But my last one, God, this is tough. I'm going to go with a game for Nintendo 64. It was also on Game Boy Color. You guys remember Game Boy Color? It's crazy. Came out in 1999, and that's Mario Golf. Now, it's kind of an unconventional pick, but the reason I went with this is because it's, you know, I could go with, you know, the Tiger Woods franchise, but the Mario Golf is a much more simplified version of golf. It's easy just to pick up and play the game without having a huge, you know, golf IQ, which I think that's what a video game really should be. I think it appeals to a broader audience. And even though pretty much the concept of Mario Golf was really simple, it still incorporated a lot of golf aspects into the game. You know, stuff that you had to take in consideration, like wind, rain, the ball spin. Each character had their own different set of attributes. So, I mean, speaking of characters too, you had everybody. You had Mario, Luigi, you could play as Yoshi, you could be Princess Peach, you could be Wario, you could be all of them. They were all there. And you don't hear a lot about Mario Golf, but it received very favorable reviews. Game Informer gave it a 9 out of 10, and IGN gave the Game Boy Color version a 10 out of 10. And they called that a Game Boy version an absolutely brilliant rendition of golf and a perfect game on the go. And it's It's Mario Golf.
5 picks for our audience: Tecmo Bowl Super Bowl, NBA Jam, Wii Sports, Madden 04, and Mario Golf. Right. Just a quick recap of yours for our listening and audience: Mike Tyson Punch Out, NHL 94, MVP Baseball 2005, and NCAA Football 2014. With the last pick, 10th overall, 5th round, who are we taking?
Mario Golf was not one of my 3 left. Looking at my 3 left, this is tough. I'll go ahead and give honorable mentions to the 2 I'm not picking, and I want Bennett to let me know if they were in his list. Honorable mention goes to NFL Blitz.
Nope.
Oh, it wasn't. Very game-changing game. Honorable mention goes to WWF No Mercy, one of those great Nintendo 64 wrestling games. I went with the last installment just because it's the last one. They had more. That was really the culmination of how great it was. But what I'm going to have to go with the last pick in this draft, is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. And you got to go with number 2 because the original Tony Hawk video game set the standard for an engaging yet challenging gameplay. But it's the second one that took that standard that the original made and then just added to it. It presented a career mode. It gave you the ability to create a skater. It gave you the ability to create a park. It gave you a multiplayer mode. This game, the second installment, not the original, but the sequel, sold over 5.3 million copies across all platforms. Bleacher Report had it come in at number 9. We've got it coming in at number 10 on our list, but I'm going to round things out with Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2.
All right. Well, I'll talk more about that here in a minute. I don't have any questions for you all, so I'll give you a minute or two. Bennett, convince me why your 5 that you have chosen tonight is better than Rut's.
Yeah, first off, my 2 that were my honorable mentions was number 1, Ken Griffey Jr. Presents Major League Baseball. What a fun game. It was also really stylized too, and it had a lot of very innovative things for its time. And my second one, which I almost put in here and I kind of feel bad that I didn't, is NBA Street. That was my game. I played so much NBA Street. What a fun game.
I'm shocked you didn't get it in there.
I didn't, but it's okay. I needed couple more picks, really. 5 is just, gosh, it's tough with 5, really. Anywho, Elrod, I guess I'm a bit of like an old soul, especially when it comes to video games. A lot of my picks are old school games, the newest one being Wii Sports, which was 15 years ago already. It's kind of hard to believe. But my lists are considered, some of the best games of all time, as is Rut's too. But when you look at like Tecmo Super Bowl, NBA Jam, stuff like that, these are the best games that came out during really the golden era of video games, if you will. A lot of my games lean more on the like stylized, like Wii Sports is kind of, they were all kind of weird looking. NBA Jam was very stylized. Mario Golf. Really the only ones that were supposed to look realistic was Madden 04, which was pretty good for its time. Key thing with mine, though, all 5 of my games are games that you can pick up and play, without much IQ and much knowledge into the game. Maybe Madden 04, but and a lot of these 2 are very critically acclaimed. Tecmo Super Bowl, one of the best. NBA Jam, one of the best. Wii Sports, best-selling Nintendo game. What I say, like 82 million copies, something like that. Crazy. Madden 04, the most iconic Madden game, one of the best franchises. And Mario Golf, who's my underdog, but got huge critical acclaim scores but you just never really see it on a lot of the top lists, if you will. So yeah, so that's why I went with my 5 picks.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Close us out. Why is your 5 better than Bennett's?
Well, I can't knock Bennett's list at all. I will say, looking at the 5 that I've accumulated here, there's a lot here that they all have staying power. I've got several cult classics in my list, as Bennett does too with Tecmo Bowl and NBA Jam, but I've got some that transcend the sport they represent themselves. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out was fun for people that cared nothing about boxing and introduced some people to boxing. In 1994, not a whole lot of people cared about the NHL, but boy, did they love playing NHL 94, even non-hockey fans. And nobody in the world, other than a few people, cared about skateboarding until Tony Hawk came around. And you're not going to see my fat self up on a skateboard anytime soon, or even back then, but you can bet I was doing some sweet moves on Tony Hawk Pro Skater, the first one and 2. I think they transcended their sports themselves. They've got the staying power. They've got the cult classics. They're all playable today. And one thing I'll say that mine has on Bennett's, and maybe this doesn't matter to you, Elrod, the moderator, or you out there, the listener, but for the most part, my games are dealing with real people. Now, Bennett's got Wii Sports, which I guess you could say is real people because it's supposed to represent you. And then he's got the Mario folks out there playing golf, which is cool. That game was a lot of fun. But I mean, all mine are real athletes. Maybe not on Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. Tyson was real. Now, if you beat up Soda Popinski in the first or second fight there, that's not necessarily a real guy. But other than that, the only non-real person, John Dowd, is probably the greatest player on any of these games. But yeah, Bennett's list is very solid. But I think mine, you're never going to have a problem finding somebody to play any of these games with you. Somebody may not like Mario. I don't know. But you're never going to have a problem getting somebody to play these games with you for years and years and decades after they came out and to come.
Well, guys, I must say, in preparation for this show, I looked at a number of things. I went to my favorite site, Ranker. As we all know, I love Ranker. Big proponent of that website. I went to other websites as well, and all of the video games that you both chose tonight are on each list somewhere. It may not be top 10. A few of these are definitely top 5 across the board, but these are very good lists. What I want to do, I've had 7 video games that I chose tonight going into this
I thought
topic.
You said 6.
I had 7. I'm sorry, I had 7.
He added Mario.
I did not add Mario. I had 7 games that would give bonus points to each of you in terms of your grade if you would hit them. Number 7, I'll just go 7-1. Number 7 was NBA Jam. I loved NBA Jam.
7?
7, yeah. 7 on my list. In terms of if you hit one of these video games, you got double points. NBA Jam was one of my favorite games growing up. Even though MJ was not in the game, you still had Pippen, you still have Rodman in the game. Loved that game.
Real quick, I specifically remember being like 8 years old and getting NBA Jam. And I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to be Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen. So I started going through the list, and I was like, well, there's Scottie. Where's Michael? Nope. Then it circled back around to the starting 2, and I was like, what? So I went through it again, and not there. And, of course, you didn't have the Google back then where you could look it up. So that was terrible.
That was disappointing.
It was.
Number 6 on my list, neither of you chose, was one of the NCAA footballs, but but it was the '04 edition. It was the one with Carson Palmer. It was the one where you had the college classics. You could play you could play iconic plays like the play with Stanford and Cal. Right. I also had the Sports Illustrated one. If you're in the dynasty mode, like it did a recap of that week, and that was pretty cool. Number 5 on my list was also an NCAA football game. It's one we've talked about tonight. NCAA Football 14. So as we sit here right now, it's 1-1 on the bonus points. Now, number 4 on my list, I thought Rut was going to pick it, but he chose the second one. The first Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1.
Who was better?
Loved that game. I know that the second one had all these additional stuff, but that game was just before that brought so many people into skateboarding. Before this Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 game, it was kind of a taboo thing. It made skateboarding cool. And it also has one of the greatest soundtracks in the history of video games, the first one. So almost close but no cigar right on that one. Number 3, Madden 2004. Bennett chose this, the Michael Vick edition. I went back, 04 and 05 really have similar reviews. 05 is a little bit, in terms of the rating, a little bit lower than 04. So either one of those editions of Madden would have been good.
05 introduced the hit stick. That was
Yes.
that was a lot of the reason why it was a big deal.
Number 2, and I thought that Bennett was going to choose this, but he went with Mario Golf. But nobody talked about a Tiger Woods game tonight. Tiger Woods 05 and 06 are always number 1 or number 2 in terms of that franchise, in terms of the courses, the different options. But number 2 on my list is Tiger Woods 2005. It's the first game where you can play St. Andrews. I think Pebble Beach was on that edition. Tiger's Unstoppable with the Sunday Red. I think even John Daly is on the 05 edition too, which puts it over the top. Number 1, okay, y'all should both lose because neither of you chose this game. I know Rut thinks this game is a little bit overrated. Who am I going with?
If you say NFL 2K5, you're the biggest idiot on the face of the earth. That game is so overrated. It's on every single list, and I don't know why. That game sucked.
NFL 2K5
Sucked.
is the best football game of all time.
You're fired from this show.
It is. No, it ain't just me saying this. It's
there's a bunch of other idiots that agree with you.
It's with your friends on Ranker that you pump up every week about how great Ranker is. Well, Ranker loves it just as much as I do because it's on the top 5.
But look at what the good things they say about it. Oh, they had the ESPN tie-in. They had Sports Center cutscenes. Okay, the gameplay still sucked. And this
it did. The
be a
gameplay
player
was great.
mode where the first player vision was
That's
the
cool.
worst thing in the history. Did you
That
ever
is
complete a pass in that mode? No, you didn't.
Was
Did
the
you
first
ever
time
run
could
more
ever
than
do that.
7 yards in that mode? No, you didn't. It sucked.
The halftime show was glorious. Like it was like you're watching. It's like you're watching an actual NFL game. The halftime show.
Or you could play Madden, and it's like you're playing an actual NFL game.
You see, what happened was after 2K5, after that, you can't fault Madden. Madden 05 is one of the best entries in the franchise.
And put that line out of business.
No, there was some backroom dealing on that. After that, they acquired exclusive rights, and there has not been a 2K5 game since.
You know what happened? Because the NFL looked at it and said, this game sucks. Let's only let EA Sports put out NFL games.
So, yeah, a lot of hate from you, Rut. But unfortunately for you, Bennett, in terms of my points, my bonus points, wins 2-1. And you get deducted a point for crapping on NFL 2K5. So you have no bonus points tonight. So Bennett is the winner.
So just for the people listening at home or listening in their vehicles, going to work, wherever you're going, we're saying that NFL 2K5 is better than NHL 94. It's better than Punch Out. It's better than Tecmo Super Bowl. You want to say it's better than Mario Golf? Okay, it's fine. But
It's
come
a great
on.
game.
That game.
Great game. I picked that one just for Rut. I knew he would explode.
Here's the thing. That game, that franchise made me hate 2K Sports for years until NBA 2K11, when the basketball games started to really pick up again, when they got Jordan back for the 2011 edition, and it really became the game it is today. There was a 6-year period there where I refused to play any 2K games because that video game sucked so bad.
No,
I don't get your hate. Like every single website that reviews video games has at least a 9.3 on this game. I don't get it. I don't get the hate.
Look at what they say about it. They never say a word about gameplay. Oh, they had the ESPN Sports Center cutscenes and the halftime shows were great. Who cares?
Well, I mean, I don't think they just rated that game just because the cutscene's over a 9. You gotta.
None of
You
these.
just hate it because T.O.'s on the cover. Let's be honest.
I love
You don't like
T.O. I'm the biggest T.O. fan you know. Bennett, who's a bigger Terrell Owens fan than me?
probably Terrell Owens' mom.
Terrell Owens' mom and Terrell Owens himself. I'm number 3.
Yeah.
Well, Bennett, you have convinced me, and you have got the most points tonight. Congratulations.
Well, right then. I did not expect that.
Congrats to
Got a
Bennett.
solid. It's got a solid list here. The only reason I didn't put Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 is because I never played it, and I would have felt like, I don't know, like a poser talking about a video game I never played. Yeah.
Bennett had a solid lineup. I'm not even mad I lost. I'm just mad you're spewing that NFL 2K5 crap. That game sucked.
Hey, that year had some great video games. That NCAA game was good. Tiger Woods, best entry in the franchise, 2K5, and Madden. Great year for video games, sports world.
3 out of 4 ain't bad.
The NCAA game was good that year.
It was a good year.
05 was it was 05.
Was
We'll look this up.
I say Desmond Howard was either 05 or 06. He might have been 06.
It was Fitzgerald. Harry Fitzgerald. Pitt Panthers.
Yep, that's right. Well, Elrod's not even involved in the debate and still makes the terrible arguments on this show. Congrats to Mr. Bennett. Like I said, I'm not even mad I lost. Bennett had a great list. Several games that I was pissed he took. But I'm much more pissed at that NFL 2K5 crap you're spewing.
Just for you. Just for you.
All right,
You know,
guys. Go ahead, B.
My only regret on the show was our coin toss at the beginning of it, instead of getting the overall ranked score, whatever it was for, what was it, Georgia State or whoever the heck it was. It should have been over under on how many combined controllers were thrown between me and Rut. Combined.
A lot.
That would have been much better.
I spent a lot more money on controllers than I did actual video games. Round about probably 02, 03 into like 07, 08. High school, early college, I broke a lot of controllers. Not proud of that. And then controllers got really expensive, and somehow my anger calmed itself.
Yeah, when they started going wireless, they went further, but they cost more.
Yeah, they did. I think the last, well, never mind. I was about to tell a personal story, not that it's anything bad, but nobody listening to this will care. So with that, we're going to sign off for this week. We will be back next week. Don't know what we're discussing yet. I feel like I say that every week because I do, but we're sure it'll be something good. I'm going to get off here, and in the process of editing the show, I'm going to play a little Madden, the only NFL franchise that counts. Any parting words, gentlemen?
Very underrated sports video game, NFL 2K5.
I'd rather have NFL Street than 2K5.
Street, Blitz.
The worst video game
Blitz
of all
should have been on
time,
this list too.
sports-wise, the worst sports video game is NFL Head Coach. Terrible.
Or
game.
American
Who's better
Gladiators.
than 2K5? What, Bennett?
Or I'd rather play American Gladiators than 2K5.
I liked American Gladiators.
Oh no, I felt like even as a kid, like I was super excited to like, I think I rented that. I don't think I bought it. But even like going home and like playing it, I felt like something was wrong. Like I just got ripped off of $2.
I mean, don't get me wrong, it sucked, but I liked it. So
Ain't that how much a video game cost? Was like $2 at Carthage Video.
something like
Something
that.
like that.
Three.
Good days. $3.
No, it was 2 in our day. You lived.
It was 2 in our day.
Yeah, back in the day.
But if you rented it on Tuesday, you got to keep it 2 nights. So, all right, guys, that'll be it for us this week. Make sure you're checking us out, all the socials on the YouTube, and of course, right here in podcast land next week. Until then, for Mr. Bennett, for Mr. Elrod, I am Rut, and we'll see you later. Peace.